Welcome and thank you for joining us for episode 4 of the ChickenBytes podcast with Dr. Gustav Brink. Today's episode focuses on the International Trade Commission of South Africa, or ITAC. Dr. Brink, you have worked closely with ITAC for a number of years. What can you tell us about your experience with the Commission?
If you look at ITAC, quite frankly, we have 2 investigative units in trade remedies. What you would normally in government call a director, so in there it's called a senior manager, of one of the units has now been suspended for nearly 3 years. But nothing happens. There's no disciplinary hearing. They're not terminating a contract. They're not getting anybody else. So you sit with that for starters. You have different investigation procedures between the 2 different investigating units. You'd submit something to one and they say, no, this is wrong. If you submit exactly the same thing in another case to the other unit, they accept it and it's perfect. You've had quite a few of your senior people leaving. In fact, the other senior manager left early this year. And I mean, she was a director there since ITAC was founded, so since 2002. Going over from, we actually started in December 2001. Transforming what was the old Board and Tariffs and Trade into ITAC. So, I mean, she had a lot of experience. She left because of the way things were being done there. So it's a very difficult environment for ITAC or for the investigating officers to work in. There's no money to conduct overseas verifications. So when I was investigating officer with the Board and Tariffs and Trade, one of the perks of the job was if your exporters responded and your investigation, you would actually go overseas, you would verify the information, and you can just do so much better work when you're in an actual verification than trying to obtain information on a virtual verification, because you can't see the people, you can't see their body language, you can't do this investigation or this verification looking at 3 different things at a time. You're dependent on what they put on the screen, and then you see the screen only, etc. So you simply don't have the same impact. The problem also is that within ITAC, with the 2 units, they follow different procedures. So what the one accepts as correct, the other one rejects. And it's sometimes absolutely ridiculous things. So for instance, in a recent investigation, we submitted information. Now, ITAC, unlike most authorities in the world, still require a hard copy. I mean, spare a thought for all the forests in the world.
Yeah.
During COVID, we could get away with just soft copies. Now they want hard copies again. So we print double-sided. They give us a deficiency and say you cannot submit information printed double-sided. Now, where in the regulations do they get that from? There's not even a guideline that says that. So you have to reprint everything, destroy another couple of trees, while the other directorate has no problem accepting information like that. So you need standard investigation procedures. I know that ITAC at one stage looked at a document management system for investigations, and I know it's pretty expensive because I know I think just about the only people in the world that put these systems together, because they have to look at exactly what each authority is doing, how these things should work, what the interaction should be, the interface, etc. And I think it came to about R1 million or so, which would be less than 1% of ITAC's budget. Yeah. But ITAC simply said, no, it's too much. And it means that there's no system. We had a court case against ITAC a couple of years ago where when we requested the record, they couldn't produce it. And eventually when they did, there were several documents that they submitted that had never been on the index. So you never knew that those documents existed, to the extent that one of the consultants on the other side complained and said, but if he knew about these documents, he would have presented his client's case completely different. Yeah. So there are lots of problems, which again, if you have an electronic system, would just make everybody's lives so much easier, because then you have immediate proof of where everything is. One of the roles that I was specifically appointed for back in 2001 was to have a look at the International Trade Administration Act, the ITAC Act, and give them comments on that. And I came up with several pages, and they said, no, we can't change this now because it's been to the portfolio committee in Parliament X number of times. And if we now come with these substantive changes, they'll kill us. We are now 23 years later, and they still haven't changed anything. We have legislation that simply does not meet our requirements. Bear in mind that when the anti-dumping regulations, as well as the countervailing and the safeguard regulations, were adopted 2003, 4, and 5 respectively, the WTO was less than 10 years old. It is now 30 years old. You've had so many decisions by the dispute settlement body of the WTO, by panels, by the appellate body, by the multi-party interim arrangement that's in the place of the appellate body, that have interpreted different provisions of the agreement. And even though I drafted the regulations, if I had to do it today, more than 20 years later, there are a lot of provisions that I would change because, first of all, I've learned a lot more. And secondly, a lot of these things have been specifically interpreted by the WTO. We've never reviewed, well, we reviewed it in 2006, and what they proposed was so outrageous that there was such a lot of pushback that nothing happened. Now, again, we're 18 years later. The European Union reviews their trade remedies legislation every 5 years, and it's tendered out to an independent company or consortium, whatever, to do the review on their behalf, benchmarking against 5 or more other countries and saying, does this work, does this not work, how can they improve it, etc. Now, the EU does it every 5 years. We haven't even done an internal review in 20 years. Clearly, we need to do something about that. And bringing that back to the poultry, if you had an efficient system with proper legislation, proper training to the people, proper questionnaires. I mean, if you pick up an ITAC application questionnaire now, it still requires you to submit the information on the CD-ROM. I mean, how archaic can you be? You don't even update something as basic as that. In fact, in the last poultry investigation, we received a document setting out the calculations for the margin of dumping for my client. And there were 2 separate calculations. And the one said 25% and the other one said 80%. And we said, but which one are you working on? And they had no idea. We said, but how did you get to this one? And they had no idea. We had one of the other consultants had a case where when they asked for the calculations, the investigating officer told them, sorry, I don't have the calculations anymore and I'm not prepared to do it again. Now the commission takes a decision on calculations that don't exist. So clearly there are a lot of problems in the system. And if you can fix those problems, then your trade remedies, first of all, would be so much more efficient. When I left ITAC, one of the last things I did was I created a program, Excel-based, to calculate the margin dumping. I have actually since significantly enhanced that, as I did that for several other countries as well.
Yeah.
When 2 years ago, I spoke to one of the investigating officers about the program and how can you not know how to calculate this when I gave you the program? They said, what program? They didn't even know that it existed. So what was done is gone.
Thank you for joining us today on Chicken Bites, and we hope to have you on the next episode.